Hello, hello, can you hear me? Okay, I think it's much better now. We'll just give a few more minutes, just a minute or two for those who were here before. Okay, please join us. Oh, thank you, Dr. Joy. Can you hear me clearly now? I hope so. Sorry about that. I think we also had to meet up and okay, excellent, excellent. Just one more minute I think we had one or two more people, just so that we get started on the same page. Thank you for joining us and thank you so much for your patience. I appreciate it. We're going to be discussing Montessori observation, very important and interesting topic when it comes to the Montessori curriculum, Montessori subject area, and even parenting. We're going to find out why this is a very key topic. So please share the link, the new link with your friends and family. The replay will be available on the same link as well. Thank you very much. Just sharing again. We're live now. Thanks for your patience. Okay. I think just one more person and we're good. So how is everything going, Dr. Joy? I hope you're getting ready for the season, the Christmas celebrations. I trust that.
Dr. Joy.
Yeah.
Well, why is she only there?
Yeah, there are other people too. Okay, thank you very much. Timitope can hear me as well. Thanks for that confirmation. So I think other people will still join us along the way, but just to make sure those who were here before do not miss the beginning of our live session today. We are discussing Montessori observation. It's a powerful tool in your parenting, powerful tool in your education as well. My name is Nkem Sinachi Ago, and I'm the founder of the Montessori Home Education Academy. We run the Montessori Home Education program, which spans for 12 months. I know some of us have signed up, and if we're yet to do so, make sure you don't miss it. Just 14 days to go. We have payment plans available. We're going to learn more about it during this session and why it is important, of course. So, the first thing, whenever we try to talk about something, you want to know why that is important because that would set the precedence, for whether you should even pay attention to what I'm going to say today or not, right? If you don't think observation is something that is key, you might just listen a little bit and you tune out, right? So I'm going to start by telling us why we need to observe our children and what is all this. If you've heard about Montessori observation, observing your child. Even last week we talked about the importance of knowing your child, observing your child, and following your child. But if you don't know what observation really means, in the real sense of it, it's not just, some may say I'm just observing somebody and you're just looking with your eyes, with your side eye or your corner eye. That's not the kind of observation we are looking at. It's going to be a very deliberate and intentional observation with even a notebook, or more preferably a journal. I'm going to be sharing that with us. So we're going to start with the why, and then we'll go, after that, we'll now go into, okay, how do you go about this observation? What do you need to take note of? So we'll dive right in. The first thing we'll say is, why do we need to observe our children? Dr. Maria Montessori, who started up this Montessori method, she was a medical doctor, also a scientist. So she approached her study of children, her work with children, she approached it like a scientist. Most of us, we have different areas of practice. We might be doctors, we might be engineers, we might be lawyers, we might be teachers, we might be carpenters. Whatever it is that we do, we spend a lot of our time doing. It's a skill that we build skills that we can transfer to whatever area of our lives, right? So, for example, I've spent a lot of time doing project management, and when I'm trying to explain executive functioning for children, I see it as project management because that's what I've done spent a lot of years doing. So even though I'm doing education now, which is a very interesting area, I still see myself calling on previous knowledge, previous experiences. So that's the same thing with Dr. Maria Montessori. As a medical doctor, as a scientist, she was able to call on her previous skills or even her current skills as a doctor to sort of analyze children, to study children and find the best ways to help them. And one of those tools she came up with was observation. As a scientist, if you're going into some research, you want to spend some time thinking about the problem you want to solve. You don't just create problems and start solving them. You need to look for real problems, right? So for children, if you had listened to the 5 W's and 1 H of Montessori, the session we had a number of weeks ago, I had shared that the history of Montessori, or I think that was the topic on special needs, actually, Montessori and special needs. We shared a little bit about the history of Montessori, how it started off with how she was meant to help an institution that had some psychiatric patients, and not only psychiatric patients, just maybe some patients with one need or the other, some that had some special needs. In, of course, different terminologies were being used then. But for the children, what she noticed was that apart from whatever health challenges they had, apart from whatever difficulties they had, these children were not being engaged. They were just giving medication. They were just being, the focus was just on treating, trying to make them better, in quotes, right? And then she decided to observe these children for a while. And from observing them, she saw that they were very capable in many other aspects, right? So when we look at disability, sometimes it's easy to focus on all the things maybe a child cannot do, or even a person, all the things that a person cannot do. But when we begin to look at what they can do, and like she was able to look at what the children could do, she was now able to find some results, start developing some materials that children could use. And even in spite of whatever needs they had, those children began to thrive. And then from moving to helping children with special needs or some other patients, she had another assignment where she had to work with children that were poor. The only thing the only challenge they had at that particular point in time was not any health issue, but just being poor. And so because they were all in a house, their parents had to go to work, or maybe their caretakers trying to raise some money to take care of them. So the children were mostly chaotic during that period when they were staying at home. So Montessori was called to help them again. And she found out that the same materials and the same methods she used for the children that were in the special care home was also working with the children who were in the poor, who were classified as poor then. And then in the long run, from the special needs to the poor children to regular children, who maybe they didn't have any special needs, they didn't have any poverty issues, the same methods work. But how did she find out all these things? How did she do all these things? It was really from observing the children, right? So the first main reason why we want to do observation is to be able to know the children better. A lot of the time we find ourselves taking care of our children, just providing food, clothing, and shelter for them, but we don't really know who they are. And last week we spent a lot of time talking about doing the analysis of a seed and why we need to know our children. If we don't, I'm sorry, just a second, please. Okay. Okay, I hope you can hear me better. So last week we looked about knowing your child, and now the first importance, or the first reason why we want to do observation, is to be able to know our children better. So last week we talked about, I would say, 6 S's or 6S of knowing your child. We did the seed analogy, right? And the first thing was, who is your child? Looking at the seed, which seed do you have to plant? What is their sensitive period, right? What season are they in? So you're looking at a seed, you have seasons. Looking at children, they also have seasons of life. They have their sensitive periods. We're also looking at where would they thrive best. All these things that we're looking at in terms of knowing our children cannot come by magic if we haven't observed them. We also looked at what do we need to support our children. If it's comparing it to a seed, we looked about how different plants, different fruits, different vegetables need different forms of support, whether it's somewhere they can creep along or whether it's a stand to support the fruits that they will bear later on. We also look at the purpose, the style. That was the 5th S, the style of the plant. Is it a fruit? Is it for decoration? Because that will determine where you're going to plant it, right? So for the children, we looked at what is their purpose? Why are they here on earth? And then lastly, we looked at the 6th S, which is seek. So seeking knowledge, seeking wisdom, seeking mentorship. And that's where the Montessori Home Education Program comes in, because there's a lot of things to learn. And it runs for 12 months, covering different subject areas. But even when we do a program like that, we find out that if you don't know your child, or if you're not able to observe them, you cannot really support them. Because I might share an activity with us. Oh, today you're going to be doing your family tree. But then you are not sure how to incorporate your child into that project because you don't know your child well. Knowing your child goes beyond knowing their name, what school they go to. Knowing more about them comes from observing them. So that's just one of the I'll say one of the whys of the importance of observation. Um, this is the journal. I think I may have shared this with us a couple of times. Yeah, that matches the logo in the back. So it's this covers for 12 months. Now I have been using the one for at the beginning of the journal. We have a couple of pages talking about observation and how to go about it. Of course, don't let this delay you. You can definitely start with a regular notebook. The next part of the second half of this session, we'll be talking about how to make these observations, right? You can start with a notebook, taking records of what you are seeing your child doing and so on, and we'll get details of that. But why I like the journal is because it has some prompts, that can really help you to make the best use of your observation. Because sometimes you pick up one notebook, you write something, the next moment you can't even find the paper where you scribbled what you scribbled, or maybe your child asked for something you can't remember why. But ultimately, you observe so that you can know your child beyond just knowing them as this is their name, this is their school, some other details about them that would help you to support them. And then the second thing I wanted to mention before going to the next reason for observation is some of the previous participants in our program last year, they have signed up for this year, which is something that will tell you that, okay, there was definitely some value that they got. But what I noticed from those who were able to do very well in that program was that they were taking notes, they were observing. One of us, one of the parents had mentioned how she became a detective, and that detective really is about observation and journaling. Another person too, who also had a lot of success, was also someone that documented a lot, right? So that writing down of what you see in your child is a very big deal, and it is very, very key. And you need one journal per child. So that's why I'm saying whether you get a notebook, whether you get our journal, which is for 12 months, make sure you start off with something first, and then you can plan for getting the journal. Now, the second reason why you need to observe your child and why we need to observe our children is to be able to treat them better. Now, treating them better, the word treat there has multiple functions. So you can say treating them better in terms of how we relate to them. When you know the challenges that they have, when you know their personalities, their strengths, their weaknesses, you actually be able to empathize with them in certain things. You also be able to support them in certain things. Now, the other part of treating them is like when you look at it like a doctor. If you go to the doctor because you're sick or you need help, the type of treatment that you get, right, or the type of treatment the doctor gives you can be dependent on how much information they have. So for you to make the best treatment of your child, you need to be able to observe them well and also journal it. So I'm going to share a little bit of let's say an analogy or a story. Imagine now that your child, let's say if they had 4 points in time, um, or if okay, let's say if somebody has a fall, or if a child has a fall, there are some key things you want to take note of before you just start rushing them to the hospital. First, you want to take note of where they fell. You want to okay, sorry, just a minute. Thank you for your patience. I have some August visitors here. So you want to take note of where the child had a fall. You want to also take note of how they fell. What were they doing before they fell? Where did they fall on? Did they bump their head or their leg or their hand? Did they fall from a height or from a short distance? Was it just a trip and fall? What even made them to fall, right? So some of these key things, because you might even say, oh, I don't need to know why they fell at this point. I just need to rush them to the hospital. But if somebody falls and they slipped on a banana peel, yes, you can take note of that to be able to fix and prevent that from happening next time. Or maybe there's water on the floor. But on the other hand, if they just fall unprovoked, it's a different issue altogether. Maybe there's something deeper even going on, right? You can tell whether it was just an accidental fall, or maybe the body just got dizzy or numb or some other thing, right? So it's just taking one extra minute to even think, to stop and think about what happened, make observation, maybe write down, not write down, whatever it is, can make it can actually be a life and death situation. It can make a big difference when you do rush the person to the hospital, whether the doctor will be able to respond quickly, how they'll be able to address it quickly. Imagine someone falls and it's their shoulder that they hit, and you're busy putting ice on their head, right? You're going to be wasting your time. And then 5 minutes later, you now see a very big swelling, the place that was actually hit, because you didn't pay attention to what happened and you didn't ask anybody what happened, right? So for us as parents, we have our children with us. It mustn't be an incident or whatever it is, but even just being able to observe them, knowing what is typical and what is atypical per child, it goes a long way. And we know that every child is different. We know that they are not even twins are different, right? If you're just recording everything together, oh, these children did this today, da da da, you're just grouping it all together. You can't even tell easily when one person is having an issue or not, except it is something that is very, very obvious, or when it has become so bad. That's when you will now notice it. However, if you take your daily observations, you can see when something begins to deviate from the norm. That's why we say the Montessori observation is really like a scientific observation. So that example of a fall is very, very critical. Even sometimes, like when we have younger children, right? If they, let's say we just hear them suddenly start crying, and we just jump to pick them up. If we don't know what happened, again, we cannot help them much. We just pick them up and say, "Oh, stop crying, stop crying." But the issue is not that they are crying. The issue is, why were they crying? What happened? And if you don't find out why, it's nothing stops it from happening again. So the same with our children. We need to take this, we need to journal about them. We need to make observatory notes about them regularly. Daily is ideal, and that's why you have that book for 12 months, every single day of the month, and then you keep that record. So the why, I think, hopefully I've covered the why of making observations of our children. And even, like I said, like I shared the analogy of the fall. If you were not there, for example, when the fall happened, maybe it was at school or maybe there was somebody else around, you would want to ask the person some of those questions to find out. You're not just asking for the purpose of for fun, right? You're asking so that you can help help out the child beyond the initial treatment they receive, right? If it's in school that they fell and they say, "Oh, your child fell, but they're okay now," you still want to know what happened, right? Is that not correct, right? So this you need to check when it comes to the child's education, to their development. If we are not keeping records, we're going to have a lot of challenges. And even if you have an infant, in fact, it's so powerful. I know a lot of us, maybe with smaller children, we are so interested in the milestones. Oh, want to know when they had their first fall, want to know when they had their first teeth, their first steps, first smile, this and that. Some of these records, even without making too much effort, if you have your journal, it will be there by default. You just take a small note. It doesn't have to be too long. A lot of us might be willing to spend a lot of money buying a baby book. Oh, first this, first that. But then when it now even it goes, the importance of that documentation goes beyond the first year of life, and it goes beyond the things that we think are the big things and the critical things. So I think we've addressed the issue of why probably sufficiently. If you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat as we go along. So now we're going to be looking at how to journal. Um, I'll address it with three main questions that you can ask. So the first thing is, what are you seeing? So when you see the child, let's say your child is just in a room playing, or they're eating, whatever it is, right? You first of all, you're going to pick the topic of your observation. If you want to observe something around their feeding, maybe you feel like they're not eating well and all that, you can try to do an observation for a week actually, and say, okay, today you're going to watch them at the dinner table, not just staring at them, but just taking notes, taking some deliberate notes taking some deliberate notes about what is going on, right? So you want to observe what they are doing. Let's say at the dinner table, okay, what are they eating, right? And then how are they eating it? So you're looking at what, you're looking at how, and you're going to look at what next. So those are three critical questions when you're making the Montessori observation. So if we use the example of food, you can say, okay, at dinner today, what did the child eat? Maybe the child ate rice. How did they eat it? Or they were using a spoon, they were using a fork, they were using a knife, they were using their hands, they were splashing it all over, they put some on their hair, or they ate everything, they finished their plates, they finished what was in their plate, or they didn't finish it, or they asked for extra, right? So that is the what and the how. And then what you're going to check is, sorry, Sorry about that. Okay. We'll probably have to wrap up soon because I have company here. Okay. No, you cannot join, honey. Okay. So you take note of what, you take note of how, and then you take note of what next. Sorry about that. So you need to take note of what, you need to take note of how, and then what next. So I gave the rice example. What were they eating? Let's say there was rice, there was beans, there was stew. They took the rice, they didn't take the beans, they took beans, they didn't take the stew. And maybe the next meal, you now have potato and stew also. And you notice that, okay, they took the potato, but they didn't take the stew again. So you're already beginning to see a pattern. Now, when you make observations, you're going to avoid being judgmental or assigning a reason for what they did or why they did it. You have to be objective. So, for instance, you won't say, oh, let's say Obi, you won't say that Obi ate his food as if he was hungry. No, what you say is that Obi ate his food quickly, right? Or he ate using his left hand or using his right hand. You won't start saying something like as if he was hungry or he looked um that's I'm just trying to explain how you don't want to read too much meaning into what they are doing. Your own is just to take notes. What are you seeing? He ate his food sitting upright, he was slouching, he was doing this, he was doing that. Don't start writing that, oh, he looked so tired or he looked so this. No, you would say this is how the appearance was. Then when you get back outside the moment, you can now review your notes and see what could be the meaning of what you have taken note of, right? Now imagine if you take note of three different meals and you find out that in those three meals, let's say stew was a common factor, and then each time they didn't take the stew. In the journal, you will not say, oh, they ate rice, but they didn't eat the stew just like last time. No. You say they didn't eat stew. Then you will now go back and review the past 3 days and you see that there's a pattern, right? Because if you start making subjective statements during your journaling, already started making decisions in the middle of journaling. So journaling is really just writing what you are seeing and how it is taking place. Then the next thing which we try to include in the journal that we have is what next? Okay, now that you have seen this, what are you going to do with what you have seen? Another example beyond the eating one is, let's say a child is playing, they have 3 or 4 toys in front of them, um, and you see that they tend to pick a particular type of toy. You won't start saying they are always picking the red toy or they are always picking the car. No, you say today, the child was playing and he picked the car or she picked the car that was pink. When she picked the car, she drove it this way, or she made some ambulance noises or police car noises. That is what you take note of. And then the next day, you might also see that out of 3 toys, maybe there was a doll, there was a car, or a different type of vehicle, or there was some Legos that was vehicle related. And you see that they go for the one that is vehicle related. Of course, you begin to see a pattern. These patterns don't always come up like in 1 or 2 days observation. Sometimes it comes up within a week. Sometimes it comes up within a month. I'm going to share something like, I remember when it looked like Igbo was beginning, that Igbo language learning was becoming a sort of trend, in our home. Our daughters were just getting very, very interested. Today they are learning maybe the prayers. Tomorrow they are learning the alphabet or some other thing. But there was just this interest getting kick-started. And it was when I was looking at my journal for the previous month, I saw that it was actually building up, right? They start asking some questions, what is this? Or they want to learn this aspect or that aspect, and then from when I had looked at those notes, the next question I asked, what next? What do I do with all this information? And I had written, okay, I want to start deliberately introducing them to some aspects of not just Igbo language, but also Igbo culture, Igbo songs, Igbo, practices and all that. And it's still from observations as simple as that. I started writing some Igbo books. I had the first one that I wrote, co-authored with Dr. Chido Ezika, which was the Igbo alphabets. For those that joined us for the live session where we did the importance of bilingualism, I talked about that book there. And even then, we've also been learning parts of the body. So now we have another book called Egu called akuko ahụ mmadụ, which is parts of the body in Igbo. So their interests are coming. I'm journaling, and I'm also getting ideas of what to do with those interests and how to support them in those interests. So children are a really big inspiration and motivation for a lot of things that we do as parents. Not that our life should just be centered around them, but the truth is that parenting has a way of changing you whether you like it or not, right? And if you want to support your child even before they start having, needing having some challenges to deal with, if you observe them ahead of time, if you observe them regularly, you will be able to preempt some things. You'll be able to detect what are their sensitive periods, what season are they in, and what they need help with, and how can you help them. You will also find that it's an opportunity for you to become very creative, and because when you come up with things that would support, let's say, your own children or your own family, you're ultimately developing products that will support children all over the world and families all over the world, right? So you take note of what they are doing, how they are doing, and then what do you do with that information. If you see that your child is maybe what they were doing one time is that they were singing or they seemed so interested in music, how did you find out they were interested in music? Today you saw them doing this, tomorrow you saw them doing something with singing, the next day maybe they were dancing, or you see that out of a number of choices they are tending towards one that is in a particular field or in a particular area. Then what next? Okay, I want to expose them to more variety of music. I want to register them in a music class. Sometimes it doesn't mean you always have to sign them up for one thing or the other. Sometimes even in your home, there's a lot you can do to encourage an interest, so that because we could easily get overscheduled. Oh, they're interested in football, you put them in football. They're interested in music, you put them. Before you know it, their calendar is even more full than us adults who are, who should have a full calendar. Children still need that opportunity to play around, to explore their interests. So it doesn't mean that when you now see they're interested in something, then you fill up their whole calendar with activities outside the home. You need to start by finding out how you can support them within the house and within, your initial scope, the initial sphere, and then you choose, of course, which you single out a couple here and there that you now want to go further, or maybe provide them with extra support or classes, very short classes. It doesn't have to be too long, like 30 minutes. If you're signing them up for something that will not take so much of their time and energy, and then turn it from something that was enjoyable, it now becomes like work for them. So those are the three key questions you want to take note of when you are journaling. And then even when you're just journaling, if you're not just journaling like the regular routine journaling, maybe there was something you observed, your child is struggling with one thing or the other, maybe their emotions, right? Or they are having tantrums. You can also ask yourself, what are the triggers for these tantrums? When does this normally happen? Right? Okay, what is happening? Or they're having a tantrum. Whenever they have a tantrum, they throw themselves on the floor. So that's what is happening. Okay, what is happening? The tantrum, the crying. How is it happening, right? Screaming loudly or just sobbing, throwing themselves on the floor or sitting in one corner. This is how. What is prompting it, right? What is triggering it? Maybe it happens each time you're about to leave the house, or it happens each time you're coming back into the house. Where are they coming from? Does it happen when they're coming from the same place? If you don't observe and if you don't take notes, you will just keep guessing, guessing, and guessing. So again, back to the analogy we had about the doctor trying to treat a child. If, for example, there was a fall and there is no idea where they fell, how they fell, and the child is rushed to the hospital, it will just be, oh, what happened? What happened? And then after a while, you might actually, doctor might just say, well, we just have to observe because we can't cut the body open and just start finding out where they fell, what happened, what they are struggling with, if there is no basic information. But if that information is there, then they can go straight to the point and go exactly to the area that needs help. Right. So the same thing with observation. If your child is having any challenges, you want to observe first for a while and then take note, then review your observation. Don't just write for writing's sake and then review it 1 year later. No, you want to review at least weekly or even a couple of days. You just scroll, swipe back or flip a few pages and see, oh, what did I write on this day? What is even the trend this week or this month? And then you plan for the next month, right? So when you make all those observations and you see what is next, what can you do with what you have found out, then you see it makes it easier, right? So I think generally that is what really Montessori observation is all about. Of course, there are so many other aspects. Feel free if you have questions, but for today, that is probably where we'll wrap it up. I hope you have been able to get something. I hope you now know how to do Montessori observation. If you do not, please let me know. And if you're part of our WhatsApp community, I also like to see your comments there. In the video description, we have a lot of links, links to join our community. link to sign up for the Montessori Home Education Program. We have just 14 days to go. Please don't miss it. Those who have signed up, also let's make sure you let your friends and family know, because when you start the program, you start wishing, oh, I should have told this person, I should have told that person. Don't have that regret. When you find something good, make sure you tell other people. Like, I don't know if I said it already, but those who a lot of people who had signed up for last year and finished the program have also signed up for this year. So that will tell you something. Just make sure that you are able to connect and take advantage. For 12 months. You will get exposed to a lot of things that your child needs to be learning for their different age groups. And this registration is per family, which is very good. A lot of these programs you have to pay for each child, and we know that that is not the case, because we know that children are at different learning levels. So, for example, if your child is 4 or 5, and you go and pay for a program of 4 or 5 year olds, and then they are actually advanced and they can do 6 year old work, or maybe they are still a little trying to catch up and they can do 3 year old work, you would actually be stuck because you won't get that advantage. But this is a family package, very good for you. So please tell your neighbors, tell your friends, and make sure you start taking observations and journaling today. It is very key. It has been helping me. It's giving me a lot of ideas, and I hope it can help you too. Um, and this is probably our last session for the year. We're still going to be having some videos, maybe, but maybe not live sessions. I'll post more updates on that later. And I really appreciate you all for joining. Thank you so much for your time and for your patience, especially with today's session that had a bit of delays. You can watch the replay of this anytime and share with people. Thank you very much, everybody, and I'll see you all again next time. All right, thank you. You're welcome.
I love you.
Okay, honey, I love you too. That's great. I'm glad you found it helpful. I ever since I discovered it, I've been using it too. Thank you, Temitope. Merry Christmas to you. Merry Christmas to everybody. And yes, for Christmas, of course, even when you're thinking of getting gifts, what to do with your children, for your children, observation will be a key, to that. Not, you might be getting random things that is not even connected to their personality or their interests, right? So that is very helpful. Take care, everyone, and until next time, have a good day.
You done?